thank you for joining us on Charting the Way Forward, where we deliver research-informed strategy and intelligence from across the Democratic coalition. This podcast is produced by Way to Win. I'm your host, Kerry Eleveld, and today I am joined by...
Hi, I'm Tory Gavito. I'm one of the co-founders and president of Way to Win.
Okay, and today we have not one but two special guests. This is almost the first time I think we've done this, where we've had two people on at the same time, because, you know, I'm just getting up to speed on having multiple guests. But we are going hyper-local today in two enormously important Sunbelt states, Georgia and North Carolina. So today we have two veteran grassroots organizers, Britney Whaley, Southeast Regional Director for Working Families Party, Working Families Power, and Bet on Us. It sounds enormously busy, I must say. And Dreama Caldwell, Co-Executive Director of Down Home, North Carolina. They are both in the process of laying the groundwork for two of the most hotly contested U.S. Senate races next year, holding Senator Jon Ossoff's seat in Georgia and a potential pickup in North Carolina, where former Democratic Governor Roy Cooper is vying for the seat of retiring GOP Senator Thom Tillis. So welcome, Britney and Dreama.
Thanks for having us.
We're happy to have you on. And I know that they are doing a lot more than just preparing for those two races. Of course, that's the lens that I'm bringing from a national perspective, but from a local perspective, they are doing a lot more in terms of laying the groundwork. We're super excited to dive into your work because, as you know better than most, there's no off years for grassroots organizers. Let's start by grounding our listeners in your work by having each of you talk about how you see the role of your organization as it pertains to Georgia and North Carolina. And we're going to start with a little bit simpler because Dreama, let's start. Your work is mainly concentrated in North Carolina, whereas Britney does a little bit of a multiple state thing. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about, let's hear from you about the role of Down Home, North Carolina in your state.
Yeah, thanks, Kerry and Tory, for having me here. So Down Home is important here in North Carolina. First, I want to start off with the context that out of 100 counties, 80 of those counties are rural. So there is no pathway to victory in North Carolina without rural North Carolina. And so we build a multiracial coalition of working class folks across rural North Carolina. We have home-based chapters in 12 counties, and then we have statewide members that are in other counties across the state. We across the state. We focus on like local issues. So like local strategic campaigns, things that matter to folks, like a local park, a swimming pool, just very hyper local things, and bring people in to run campaigns. And then from those campaigns, move into an electoral cycle. And then we repeat it again. And so that's, there are a few partners that are working in rural North Carolina, but in particular, the counties where we are in, most of those counties do not have anyone except for Down Home working there.
Okay, amazing. That's exactly why we have you here. I tell you what, we dropped Britney for a second. She might have had technical trouble. So let's move into a few questions for you on North Carolina. Okay. You guys had a good year last year in the state of North Carolina relative to the rest of the country, Democrats in the rest of the country. As you reviewed the outcome of 2024, what was at the forefront of your mind and your organization's mind in terms of how to move forward and build on what happened? And, feel free, I just want to remind people, Democrats swept the statewide races, the governorship, the lieutenant governor, secretary of state, AG, and I think, broke the supermajority in the state that Republicans had in the state legislature. So you guys, and also one, Allison Riggs won, the Democratic justice won, it secured another 8-year term. So you guys had a big year last year, but how do you think that sets you up, and what are you looking at moving forward based on that?
Yeah, we came into 2024 knowing that we had 3 big goals last year, and those goals were to, number one, to build our base. We knew that whatever we did had to build our base, because we knew we had to build enough power to continue to fight no matter what the outcome of the elections were. We also wanted to break the supermajority. Since 2018, we have broken the supermajority every cycle. We have done it by 1 seat every cycle. We've seen what happens where Cotham was traded her seat over to the Republicans so that they could get their supermajority back. Again, this time, rural North Carolina broke the supermajority again with Brian Kahn's seat down in Granville, Wilson, and Franklin counties. And so we know that we had to hit those goals. Those things had to happen for us to save our state, for more than one reason, but really because in the South, we're fighting for women's reproductive freedoms. And we knew that North Carolina needed to hold the line so that people would have access to care. And so that was what it was about. We were able to, like you said, win all of those seats, also elect our working class members who ran for local offices. And what it set us up for what's coming is a base of folks that are ready, that are fired up. They've seen what we're able to do. They have relationships with some of these new electeds that they have and are able to co-govern with them. And so people are ready to go. We believe that there is a pathway to winning governing power in our state by 2030. And we're bought in and ready to do the work to do that.
I'm glad you brought up the number 2030, because I just want to remind our listeners too that the electoral math no longer works with just the Northern Pass to the White House. That even if we bring back, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, those old kind of battleground states, that even if we turn them blue, even if we bring them back into the blue column, there aren't enough electoral votes to get us to the White House, because so many folks are moving from the Midwest to the Sun Belt, and so many people are leaving some of the bigger states like New York and California for the Sun Belt. And so, the electoral power of places like North Carolina and Georgia and Texas become that much more important. So the fact that you all have long-term thinking, ground game, traction, track record, and are thinking about the next decade, it's really important. Your work is so important for the rest of us to know about. So thank you.
Yeah.
I'm curious too, I don't know, I'm really taken by your point that 80 out of 100 counties are rural. And I think there's a lot of chit chatter among sort of like the elites, the people in the New York Times and the people in the podcast sphere that are just talking about like what's happening with working class voters, what's happening with rural voters, what's happening with voters of color who are working class. And, I've been at this game long enough to know that every time I bring a poll to an organizer, they're like, you needed to pay money for that? We hear that on doors every day. So I'm just curious, like, you're in it. I want to talk about like, what are some of the things you're hearing now, but what were some of the trends that you were hearing in 24? Like everybody's thinking like, what happened in 24? Like, what were some of the things that you guys were up against, and how did you push people to stay focused forward?
Well, as I stated earlier about the reproductive freedoms, we knew that was going to be an important topic. We spent a lot of times iterating our scripts on the door, just talking to people to find out what would rise to the top, to find out what would people wanted to talk about. And it was abortion. And so abortion was our persuasive topic. We particularly spent a lot of time with white rural people who were kind of like on the fence voters. And we talked about abortion, and we used Deep Canvas, which is a tool that we use, which is much more than a quick electoral speech. Deep Canvas was about sharing canvassers sharing their own personal stories, but then also allowing a place for the voter to share their own story, and so that they could connect. And so that even if people didn't believe everything across the board and were completely aligned, they knew how important that one topic was. And it was a topic that moved a lot of folks. And so that was what our conversation was for a big part of the year. The rest of the year, it was just trying to get people to turn out. And of course, we heard some of the things about Gaza. We heard, some people just honestly believe that both parties are the same and didn't find the significance of showing up. And so we were just having some very difficult conversations with folks, but really giving people a place to talk about things that they never had a space to do that. We show up on people's doors and we're often told, no one's ever knocked on my door. No one has ever asked me that before. And so that is just giving people a place to talk.
That's such a different experience too from what I was hearing from battlegrounds like out in Pennsylvania, where organizers were saying like there were so many knocks on so many of these doors that people were just like, I've heard it. And I don't know, that stories like that are fueling sort of this push away from canvas or deep canvas. But I think what you're sharing with us is a good reminder that there are still places where conversation matters and they're not happening. And there's a real difference between someone dropping off lit and someone who's like there to just ask people what is going on in your community. So that's cool to point out. I'm curious too, like you all were still recovering from a major hurricane last cycle. How did that show up in your work?
Yeah, so that actually happened, during our cycle. And so our electoral work in Western North Carolina began to shift to just making sure neighbors and stuff were okay. And so our canvassers who had been electoral canvassers began knocking on doors and doing assessments to find out what did people need, what were people okay. Because we are a local organization and we use local folks. So back when people couldn't even get into Western North Carolina, our folks were out with chainsaws on doors, helping folks out, helping people get to where they needed to go. And so they set up free markets and set up stores where people could come and get what they need. And so it just kind of shifted there from the electoral to just what folks needed. And then making sure when it was time to vote that people knew where the new locations to vote were going to be at. So that really became the work. And that work is ongoing. We shortly after that happened, the vultures showed up in Western North Carolina offering to buy people's land. And so we also started a campaign called Keep WNC Home. And that is a campaign that is going on to make sure that people who live there are able to stay there, to help get their FEMA assistance and then the community block grants and things to see what assistance can be there. That's a years and decade long recovery in Western North Carolina.
Yeah.
We have Britney back, which is great. So I do want to remind people before we get to Britney that, it's interesting you talking about being on the doors, abortion being a thing that was moving people, talking to all sorts of people who are like, there's no difference in the parties. I'm reminded that even though Trump won North Carolina by, I think, 3 points, Josh Stein, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate, won, obviously, and beat Mark Robinson. So there's a fair amount of people, I would assume, who split tickets, who maybe voted for Trump, but then also, ended up voting for Josh Stein as governor. So, okay, we can get back on that in a second, Dreama, but I do want to get to Britney. I know she's having just a little bit of technical trouble. I'm sure none of our listeners can relate to that because, none of us ever have tech trouble. But Britney, let's get back to you. We were just give you a chance to sort of introduce your work, particularly with WFP, Working Families Party, and how you kind of see that. You're the Southeast Regional Director, but in terms of like Georgia, how do you see your organization situated and what the goal is in terms of like Georgia and North Carolina?
Yeah. Thanks for having me again. And hopefully this time I'll be able to stay with the internet. But yes, I am the Southeast Regional Director for Working Families Party. And, that's 13 states. So people ask, what does that actually mean? We've been in Georgia since 2017 and have been doing work in North Carolina for a few cycles now as well. And for us, I think, we have to ask the question, right, of like how we can hack the two-party system if the two-party system is not working for everyday, like working class people, right? And so our democracy belongs to people, not corporations, not Elon Musk, not people who can buy it. And so how do we make sure that in everything we do, we're giving the weight like of our democracy, like to working class, everyday people. And so like, as you think about the party, I think it's just important to say, like, if you're in a project where you're building a left's kind of electoral expression, right, across the country, then you have to do that in coalition and really practice like radical, like deep collaboration. And so for us, that means working with labor, both organized, and we know that the labor density in terms of organized labor in the South is lower because of our right to work laws, right? So that's both like workers who are part of a bargaining unit, who are part of labor union, and those who are not, right? We have to work with social movements who a lot of times are creating these conditions, right? And they're like they're making the soil like fertile, right? So that we can come in and have the electoral fight. We have to be alongside base building organizations and community organizations and then individuals. And so ultimately it's about being in right relationship and pulling folks together so that we can see like, this is a shared electoral expression and we should contest for power on all levels of government. And we should understand where our issues live on our ballot, right? And so that feels like really important to us and to like our approach to this work. And so with that, I'll say the way we build out our programs across the region and specifically in Georgia is around a shared platform that will fight for working class people, but it's looking at every single level of our government. If you got 159 counties, then where can you contest for power? From school boards to state ledge to the governor's race and to the Senate races. But it's important for us to start with those issues first. So we're not going in and talking about the election for the sake of talking about the election. What's the mandate that we send people in with? And then we work backwards so that we can start to talk about the conditions by which we will support you.
That's right. So the social movements that you're talking about, that you collaborate with, that you want to build on, what do you see popping right now in Georgia and potentially some in North Carolina too?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few that come to mind. This is the place where I smile, right? Because it's also the place where you just have organic energy. Dreama, I know that you can speak to this probably more in depth, but I've been watching the fight against Duke and the fight held by USSW and workers really, low-wage workers, right? Let me put that in quotations, the essential workers, right? Like the folks who are working for what is close to minimum wage. But then here in Georgia, you also see that, we've had organic fights around Cop City in the last few years. And there are some folks there getting ready for a People's Movement Assembly this weekend, where they're expecting hundreds of people to come and weigh in. And so when I'm thinking about that, I'm thinking about over time, right? A lot of times I think that we have snapshots. But what's actually happening is when we have policies that, impact, like here, we have the CDC here in Atlanta. So a lot of people lost their jobs and people are now, they just started a mutual aid fund for the CDC workers, right? People don't see that as activism, but it's not only activism, but it's people standing in the gap, right? Like doing what our government should be doing. And so like, I think about that holistically, both with like the social movements and with some of the informal networks that have been created to do exactly what our government should be doing, and call the question a lot of times of what is the public good? Education is a public good. Healthcare and access is a public good. And it connects back again to something on the ballot.
Can you spell out for our listeners that you said there was a Duke fight, and then was it a labor union? You used an acronym. I want to make sure we get it right.
Oh, wait.
Well, it was USS.
I think she said USW.
Yeah.
USSW. So I was thinking of the Union of Southern Service Workers.
Oh,
okay.
yeah.
So I've seen them in a number of our fights. I mean, both rallies, but also organizing workers at workplaces, fast food workers, demanding better pay and working conditions at the Waffle Houses. Like, I'm talking about, when we talk about meeting people where they are, that means at the job site as well, especially if it's our labor and the ways we're always exploited.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry. Go ahead.
I saw that Unite here in Houston. I'm in Texas, so I follow Texas trends and Southern trends generally. And Unite here is on strike. And yesterday or Monday of this week, whenever this goes out, was Labor Day. So on Labor Day, they had an action, and there was a sign that I thought was just the sign of our times, which is one job should be enough. One job should be enough, right? And I feel like that's clearly what you're describing here, that there are movements on campuses, movements in work sites, movements across these cities saying like, we're all working and it should be one job should be enough. And so it's also really resonant with, just to make you all a little bit familiar, if you haven't been following, Way to Win commissioned and has been really pushing on a series of research projects, both voter file analysis, focus groups, polling, and back again with focus groups around what the missing Biden voters tell us, that there were a set of voters that voted for Biden in 2020, didn't show back up in 2024, and why. And the predominant theme is they want Democrats to fight for them. That the status quo, whether you look at the economy, healthcare, education, it is not working for people. And so anyway, just want to share out a little bit that everything you're sharing about what's most resonant in terms of like these organic social movements in your states feels right on track. Like, thank God you're telling us that the people are standing up and standing in the gap. I would be more depressed if it were otherwise, if there wasn't the energy.
Dreama, what do you see resonating in North Carolina? I mean, you're talking about like last year, abortion, people want to talk about abortion as you were on the doors. I mean, maybe you're not fully on the doors yet. I don't know. I'm honestly not a grassroots organizer. I have knocked doors, but like, I just don't know what the rhythm is. So maybe you're not on the doors yet, but are you seeing things resonate there in the similar, any particular topic in a similar way that abortion did in 2024, or are things starting to gain steam?
I mean, of course, with the passage of the Not So Beautiful bill that was passed, North Carolina, we just got Medicaid expansion. 12 years of fighting for Medicaid expansion. 650,000 people were able to get Medicaid because of the expansion, and now are facing the possibility of that being gone again. And so Medicaid defense work is what people are worried about. People are worried. Of course, they've heard about the changes for SNAP. They've heard about, some of the changes that are going to come and really affect and hurt our folks. So those are some of the things that people really are starting to think about, like in this current moment. We also are just spending time like really digging into local things, like, for lack of a better word, skirmishes that are just like fighting our battles locally, like what the battles that we can fight on school board levels, on county commissioner, city council levels, just digging in there. We've just had Alamance County, which is my home county, which is a place that's just had a lot of problems. Just last school year, the children couldn't go back to school on time because 31 schools had mold inside of it. And so it delayed school for a couple of weeks. The school used their money to clean up the mold, with the county commissioners promising to give them money back. And then when it was time to get the money back, the county commissioners didn't want to give them their money back. And so, you know, our Alamance folks had to show up at school board meetings, run a campaign. And then the budget came out and the school system was asking for money because now they don't have all the money that they need. And the county commissioners did not want to give that money. And so I watched, you know, in addition to not giving them money, they were going to cut the EMS services. They were going to cut hours in the library, and a coalition of folks got together and showed up at a meeting where over 200 people showed up at a county commissioner meeting. They couldn't all get inside. They had their own town hall on the steps outside. So folks are geared up and they're ready to fight for what they need and fight for what they deserve. And this is what we're doing now.
Can they attribute any of those problems to a party, Dreama, or is that just like, oh, the school board? You know what I'm saying? Like, is that, I'm not sure what the makeup, yeah.
It can be attributed to our county commissioners who are all one party. Mm-hmm. You know, as a matter of fact, Alamance County is a place where all people are elected at large. There are no districts or wards. And so their county commissioners all live in one neighborhood. And so with no representation for folks, and very little folks whose children even went to public school. So, yeah.
Wow. Britney, I'm hearing you echoes of what you said. You asked a very good question. What is a public good? And you started talking about, you know, healthcare and education and whatever. And I'm seeing, it seems like, based on what Dreama is saying, that there is some of what's happening nationally sort of, you know, trickle down into the states, but there's also local issues bubbling up. I mean, are you seeing a similar thing where some of those issues, you know, trickling down from the federal level are starting to make it to where people are grasping them? Or do you feel like there's more energy in the bubbling up area, if you will?
I think that it's a both and. I'm struggling because
is it trickling down or bubbling up? I was having a hard time following too.
You know,
sorry. Did I lose everybody? I might have lost everybody.
Me, but I mean, one thing that you have to realize is that we've just been fighting under repressive governments on the state level for longer than the country has realized and or cares to realize. And so when we're thinking about and talking about these issues right now, so Working Families Party in Georgia just endorsed a few dozen local candidates, school board, mostly school board, council, mayor. Across the board, when we're doing interviews, when we're now talking to people on doors, I'm on the coordinated side, so I'm hearing from the candidate campaigns, right? It's affordability, right? It's economic inequality. So when you're looking at Atlanta in particular, it's 50-50 in terms of income inequality, right? This is not a new statistic since Trump. And so in this moment, people are asking, how's the local leadership? What does it look like? Are you going to be bold and fight for us? When ICE is at the door, is your body on the line? Like, how are you standing in the gap and fighting for us and doing what's in your control, right? And so, yes, I think a part of it is like, you know, folks feel it, but it's not the start, you know? So that's why I laugh, because I think that people have been feeling it. And I think that people want people who are courageous on, you know, on the municipal level, on the local level. What do we have to lose? If we're going to elect more of the same and make the argument that we should do more of the same, then you're not in this moment with us. And so we need to figure it out. And that's like a good place for the co-governance, but that's also a good place to elect. Some of the people who we elect, I would say a good number, are non-traditional candidates. And these are nonpartisan races. So I know that people are talking a lot about 2026 and like next year, but we are in the throes of making sure that we have some leadership on the local level who can say, look, we're going to try a thing. We're going to do a thing that maybe we haven't tried before, because this time that we're in calls for people to be bold and to be courageous and to, quite frankly, be in community.
It really does. I mean, we're talking about, Brittany, you were talking about earlier, the experience in Georgia around the pushback against Cop City. I mean, at a time when we're seeing National Guard troops being poured into cities across the United States of America now, it's those early experiences in Georgia of organizing, pushing back, being bold. I mean, you have a lot to teach the rest of the country in terms of, I mean, both of you do, right? Like living in places like Georgia and North Carolina is the canary in the coal mine for what the rest of the country is seeing now. I'm going to attempt to do something here, and just bear with me, but like, Way to Win is at its heart, a donor community that has a number of members who are true believers in multiracial democracy. They believe in the Southern believe in reverse engineering the Southern strategies so that we can fight for Georgia, fight for North Carolina, take on these big, important structural political fights. Like I think we can fight till the cows come home on a few battlegrounds here and there, but if we're not actively working on multiracial democracy in the South, we're not actually pushing any new sort of political theory in the country, because the South has always been sidelined for different reasons. But at the end of every cycle, there's this moment where all these like pundits and vendors and political operatives race to the New York Times or race to, the Washington Post. And they're like, we know what happened this cycle. We know what happened. And in this particular cycle, the big early guys at the finish line, we're ready to say, look, the groups were the problem. There are groups that work with activists, and they were the problem, and it's pushing Democratic leadership to be too bold, too not mainstream. But when I hear you two talk, honestly, it makes me want to just like throw a table over at those guys, because it's like, what are you talking about? Like, what I am hearing from you isn't that you are groups that represent community interests, and it's not about esoteric things. It's about like, can your kids get to school? I mean, that story about the mold, not only does that impact a child's life over the long term and their ability to learn, it impacts the parents' pocketbooks that day, like whether you get to go to work or not. We all experience that. I have my kids not going to school. It makes me it's that much harder for me to work. And I don't work at a low wage job. You know what I mean? Like, so if that's true for me, it's true for a lot of people. Anyway, and then Brittany, when I'm hearing you talk about, just like the fights around wages and these things, these are the kitchen table issues. So anyway, I guess it's not a question as much as a rant, but I want to invite you into the rant with me. Like, what would you say to those folks that are like, oh, these groups are pushing Democrats to go too far? Like, what's your answer to that?
I mean, I think it's what you said earlier. We spend a lot of time just talking about our values, the basic values of, folks deserve housing and education, access to a doctor when needed. And so we at Down Home, we try to stay away from the culture wars and just talk about our values. And because we know that our values are more alike than not alike, honestly. I think we probably can fight about how we get there and who takes us there. But our actual values, we have the same values. We also are in rural North Carolina where we can't afford to throw anybody away. And so we're having to have conversations with folks who don't believe like us anyway. And so a part of that is showing that like what you have and what your issues are also matter. whether you believe what we believe or not, your issues also matter. I don't know if you mind me taking us back to what Brittany was talking about, finding candidates that like are from the community, belong to the community. Like that is so important. I ran for county commissioner in 2020 in Alamance County, had an opportunity to run and like watch my community become alive. I mean, folks who were 50 and 60 years old who had never voted before were voting because they'd known me since I was a little kid. And so just to see that excitement and to see people, the barber shops were inviting me in, the nightclub owners were having day parties, and like just to see the whole community come alive when they know people on the ticket. Into that race, I didn't win that race. I had 34,000 votes, wasn't enough to win. But what was enough, Ricky Hurtado was able to get elected to the North Carolina House, and only by a small amount of votes. And so we know the importance of that. And so down home this last year, this past cycle, we just finished our first down home candidate academy where we had 19 of our working class members who trained for a period of time in a cohort together to run a good campaign. And so now those folks are off. The wall is up, and so we're not able to communicate with them, but they're off to run in their community. And it's just nice to see. So I think that like we have to find a place to like, so much of politics has been about the billionaires, right? It's so much has been about that. And I think we get a chance and an opportunity to rewrite that story and what that is going to look like. And it's going to take us some time to get there, but like our folks are hopeful because of the wins that we were able to see in 24. We have a lot of hope and believe that we can win the majority that we need here. And so just excited about that.
I have to say, so the time is whittling away very quickly because I'm like, this is all, you know, it's such good material. It's like the minutes are flying by. You know, I do wonder what's working to your, what do you think is working? Well, no, let me ask this. Sorry, let me ask this. The minutes are whiling away and I'm thinking, is this cycle feeling like any other cycle to you? Or is it feeling different in any way? Like, I mean, obviously every cycle has its own issues, its own thing. I mean, Brittany is saying, look, we've been at this a long time here in the South, right? We are always bumping up against, you know, people who aren't interested in having us vote, people who aren't interested in making healthcare open to all, making sure everybody gets a good education. At this point in the cycle, which is still quite early, but we are starting to, you know, move into next year. How do you guys feel? Does it feel different to you in any way, or does it feel a little bit like a normal rhythm is happening?
I mean, I think for us, I think we're building off of momentum of last year. We just come off of a 300 member convention of folks that are committed and pumped to go into. We have a plan, and I think folks are ready to execute our plan. I do want to say, like, part of our success in 2024, what happened was that the donor community did a pledge of like all in by April. We were able to get our money in early. We were able to get folks hired, spend plenty of time to make sure folks were trained adequately in deep canvas. And so like getting that money in early really did give us a good start. And so I think our hope and stuff is that that will be what happens again this year, is that we're able to get money early enough to really like train folks and get them ready for the cycle.
I love that. I remember Ricky Hurtado, our Way to Lead PAC supported him. Dreama, I feel like we might have supported you a little bit. If we didn't, I apologize.
No, you did as well.
But I guess just to put a finer point on the question that Kerry had, like maybe it's just this memory that like you've been doing this work for long enough to remember like that kind of movement swell in the first reaction to Trump in 2017, when so many new things broke through in North Carolina, to then like actually going against some pretty serious like headwinds and still making traction. So I'm just grateful for all the work that you're doing out there in North Carolina. I know that we lost Britney again and again. We all have technical issues. It's almost as if someone should have put a broadband bill together.
Right? Wouldn't that have been nice?
One of those.
You know, we got Whitney.
We still have in rural North Carolina that don't even have fiber yet. So
yeah,
okay.
No, anyway, but we're just great. I'm grateful for the work. To hear that there are 300 North Carolinians gathering together for what comes next, to hear that there were 200 North Carolinians on the steps of the county commission meeting a few days ago to push for school funding. This is like civic engagement is alive and well in America. Let's just be clear.
Yeah. Brittany, I posed that question. We lost you. Maybe we can get you back for just this last answer about whether it feels like, what the cycle feels like to you in terms of maybe past cycles or not. Maybe it's of its own.
Yeah, I think this cycle, it does feel different, obviously, under a Trump administration. I also think that we are, we're trying to grasp what it means to deal with the next industrial revolution, I guess you would say, with AI, right? Like, what's ethical? We're talking about some of the same, to be clear, we are talking about some of the same things happening to our communities in terms of like harm being done, but it is almost like in a different form. So I think AI, I'm talking about the data centers and how they're popping up across the South, particularly, right? But I think that like if folks are feeling like this is the same as last cycle, they're probably not tuned in as much, which just means from where we're sitting, I think you just have to be, the way I approach it is you have to be nimble enough to meet the needs of the moment. People want community. They want to feel a sense of belonging. We want to. I go to our programming. I'm a dues paying member of WFP. Yes, I'm full-time on staff, but I'm both in, and I have been for several years. So I am being fed in these spaces as well, right? You want that. So you have to be nimble enough to meet the needs of this moment while also being disciplined to still look to your North Star for where you're going. So we still want to build governing power, we're clear. We're still fighting for our democracy, we're clear. And the way we do that, we have to be malleable in some ways. And we got to make sure that we treat humans as humans. This is not a political project that is void, right, of like just the human connection and our capacity to care for each other.
Okay. Well, that is well said. I tell you what, Dan, our producer, reminds me that we like to ask people about 3 medias that there are, media type things that they listen to or watch or whatever to unplug. Maybe since we're on shortened time frame here, we can do 2 from each of you. So, if there's a show that you're into or a podcast you like or something that just like you look forward to every day, every week, whatever it is, can you each give me 2? Dreama, you want to go first?
This is not movement related, right?
Yeah.
Nope.
Okay, because honey, I am in menopause. And so I have been listening to this Black Women Menopause podcast that has like saving my life because nobody told me about all of this. And so
nobody tells us any of this.
Nobody talks about it. And so that is my my go-to right now. And then the other thing is that on TV, so I just had a birthday August 30th. And the thing that I remember about my birthday is Hurricane Katrina. And so I have been watching all things Hurricane Katrina because it has been 30 years now. And so 20 years now. And so, yeah, that's what I'm watching currently.
Well, happy late birthday to you.
Thank you.
This will just tell where we are in our lives. But I have a 4-year-old. And similar to menopause, nobody told you how to do the whole parenting thing. Like, I was like, we're just entering all kind of stages. I just picked up Parenting for Liberation and listening to Raising Free Humans so that I can, I don't know, maybe get some intel on my approach to parenting, somewhere between gentle and because I said so. So yeah, that's kind of where I live as a 4-year-old, test my boundaries. But yeah, just trying to like dig in and make sure that like the parenting is also value aligned.
Yeah.
You know, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tori, you want to jump on board here real quick? With
I've just been there. I've been in both boats. I've parented and I'm perimenopausal. So I'm just like, I hear you.
I'm legit in both boats, so I'll take your recommendation, like right now in both of those boats. So, I feel like I'm further along on the menopause journey than I am on the parenting journey. So, anyway, okay, well, let's leave it there. I love this all women cast and crew. I loved going hyper local. Thank you both for your time. Britney Whaley of Working Families Party and Dreama Caldwell of Down Home, North Carolina, getting it done every day on the local level where people are looking for belonging, looking for community, engaging, and preparing. I mean, they are coming together, but also, preparing for what's coming, local races as well as what's happening next year. So super interesting conversation, Tori. I always love having you on board because anything that I don't quite hit, you manage to nail in a second, iteration of it.
And I bubble up.
All right. And thank you to our listeners. We so appreciate you. Remember, recruit and review. Let's keep the growth going. And with that, we will see you next Thursday. Until then, do good, be well, hug your loved ones, and please tell your dog I say hi.